The Second Chance. Part 1. The Confession. The words slipped from my lips before I could stop them, and I watched my daughter's ex-boyfriend freeze mid-step, his coffee cup suspended inches from his mouth. "Maybe I wish I'd had a lover like you," I whispered, and in that moment everything I'd built, my reputation, my relationship with my daughter, my carefully constructed life, hung by a thread so thin I could feel it snapping. Marcus didn't speak. Instead, he set down his cup with deliberate slowness, crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, pulled me against his chest, and kissed me with an intensity that stole every excuse I'd prepared. His hands cupped my face like I was something precious, something he'd been waiting to touch for years. His lips moved against mine with a hunger that made my knees buckle, and I grabbed his shirt to steady myself, feeling the hard planes of his chest beneath the fabric. I was 45 years old, recently divorced, and kissing a 32-year-old man who had dated my daughter just 8 months ago. When we finally broke apart, gasping, I saw something in his green eyes that terrified me more than the kiss itself. He meant it. Every second of it. "I've been waiting 6 months to do that, Eleanor," he said, his voice rough like gravel, his thumb tracing my lower lip with devastating tenderness. 6 months of watching you pretend you don't feel this. 6 months of going crazy every time you smiled at me across the dinner table. 6 months of dreaming about what you'd taste like. "Marcus, we can't. We already did." He pressed his forehead to mine, his breath warm on my face. "Tell me you didn't feel that. Tell me that wasn't the most honest thing that's happened in this house in 17 years. Tell me, and I'll walk away right now." I couldn't tell him, 'cause he was right. What nobody knew, what I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it wasn't true, was that I'd felt the pull toward Marcus long before my marriage ended. Long before my daughter Sarah brought him home for Thanksgiving 2 years ago. The guilt of that attraction had eaten at me like acid, kept me awake at night, made me avoid family gatherings where I knew he'd be present. And now, standing in my kitchen with his taste still on my lips, his hands still warm on my skin, I understood that some secrets don't stay buried. They grow roots and crack through concrete. The sound of a key turning in the front door lock shattered the moment like glass. If you're already hooked on Eleanor's story, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss how this impossible situation unfolds. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever felt something you knew you shouldn't? Part 2. The Intruder. It wasn't Sarah, thank God it wasn't Sarah. My sister Barbara walked in, took one look at the minimal distance between Marcus and me, the flush on my cheeks, my swollen lips, the way his hand still rested on my hip, and her face transformed into something cold and calculating. "Well," she said, setting her designer purse on the counter with deliberate care, her Louboutin heels clicking against my kitchen tile like a countdown to disaster. "Isn't this interesting?" Barbara had always been the beautiful one, the successful one, the one our mother held up as the example I could never reach. At 52, she still carried herself like a woman who'd never been denied anything, her blonde hair immaculately styled, her makeup flawless even at 4 in the afternoon. She wielded her judgments like surgical instruments, and right now she was preparing to operate. "Barbara, this isn't..." I started, stepping away from Marcus, hating myself for the automatic retreat. "Please don't insult my intelligence, Ellie." She smiled, but it didn't reach her ice blue eyes. "I've known about your little fascination since Christmas. The way you watched him when you thought no one was looking. The way you laughed at his jokes a little too loudly. The way you found excuses to touch his arm, lean closer than necessary." She examined her manicure with theatrical boredom. "Honestly, I'm surprised it took you this long to act on it. You were never good at delayed gratification." Barbara. What would Mother say? Her proper daughter Eleanor, seducing her own daughter's boyfriend in the kitchen like some desperate housewife from a daytime drama. Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of me, protective in a way that made my heart ache. "Mrs. Chun, I don't think you understand the situation. It's Miss Hartwell." I kept my maiden name, unlike my sister who gave up everything for a man who traded her in for a younger model. Barbara's gaze cut to me, sharp as broken glass. "Though I suppose you're trying to return the favor now, aren't you? Trading down in age if not in quality. Tell me, does he make you feel young again? Does he help you forget that you're nearly 50 and starting over with nothing?" The cruelty of it stole my breath. 17 years of marriage to David, 17 years of supporting his career, raising our daughter, managing our home, being the perfect corporate wife at endless dinner parties where I smiled until my face ached. And when he left me for his 28-year-old assistant, Barbara's only comment had been that I should have tried harder to stay relevant. "You should leave," Marcus said, and something dangerous in his voice made Barbara's smug expression flicker. "Now." "Oh, I'm not going anywhere." She pulled out her phone, the latest iPhone in a gold case that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Sarah deserves to know what kind of mother she has. What kind of woman waits for her daughter's relationship to end before pouncing on the leftovers like a vulture? "It wasn't like that," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I wondered if they were entirely true. Had I been waiting? Had some dark part of me been relieved when Sarah and Marcus broke up? Had I wished for it even unconsciously? The phone was already ringing, the sound shrill in the tense kitchen. "Sarah, darling," Barbara purred when my daughter answered. "I'm at your mother's house, and I think there's something you need to." Part 3. The Secret Revealed. Marcus grabbed the phone from Barbara's hand so quickly she gasped, stumbling backward on her expensive heels. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said, his voice deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded storms. "And before you destroy your sister's life to satisfy whatever twisted competition you've been running since childhood, maybe you should ask her what really happened. Ask her about Richard." The color drained from Barbara's face so completely I thought she might faint. Her hand reached for the counter to steady herself, her careful composure cracking for the first time since she'd walked in. Richard. A name I hadn't spoken in 23 years. A ghost I'd buried with my youth and my foolish dreams. The name hit me like a physical blow, and suddenly I was 22 again, crying in my dorm room, staring at a positive pregnancy test that wasn't mine. "How do you know about Richard?" Barbara whispered, her voice stripped of its usual venom. "Sarah told me. She found the letters last year when she was helping Eleanor clean out the attic. The love letters. The poetry. The promises." Marcus's jaw was set, his green eyes hard. "She knows everything. The question is, do you want Eleanor telling the full story? Or do you want to walk away now and let this family finally heal?" I stared at Marcus, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. This wasn't just physical attraction, wasn't just the flattery of a younger man's attention. He'd been paying attention to my life, my history, my pain for 2 years. He'd listened when Sarah talked about our family, pieced together the fractured narrative of who I was and why. Barbara left without another word, her heels clicking a rapid retreat across my kitchen floor, the front door slamming behind her with a finality that echoed through the house. But the damage was done, the Pandora's box was open. "Richard," I said, the name feeling foreign on my tongue after so many years of deliberate silence. "How much did Sarah tell you?" "Enough." Marcus guided me to the living room couch, sat beside me with his knee touching mine, his hand finding mine and interlacing our fingers with natural ease. "Enough to know that your sister stole the only man you ever really loved, married him, drove him to an early grave with her demands, and then spent the next 2 decades punishing you for being the one he actually wanted." The tears came then, unstoppable years of grief and rage and loneliness pouring out of me like water from a broken dam. Richard Holloway. My college sweetheart. The man with the poet's soul and the gentle hands. The man who'd written me love letters that I still had memorized. The man who'd planned our future down to the names of our children. And then one terrible night, he'd slept with my sister at a party while I was homesick with the flu. It wasn't really sleeping with her. I heard myself say, the words tumbling out for the first time in over 2 decades. He was drunk. She wasn't. She knew exactly what she was doing. Marcus's hand tightened on mine. Barbara got pregnant. Richard did the right thing. Our mother insisted. I laughed bitterly. She always said Barbara needed taking care of, that I was the strong one who could handle disappointment. So I handled it. I smiled at their wedding. I held their baby. I married David 6 months later because I couldn't stand being the object of everyone's pity anymore. Eleanor. Marcus cupped my face in his hands, thumbing away tears with infinite tenderness. You've spent your whole life being the good one, the selfless one, the one who never makes waves. You've been everyone's support system and no one's priority. When do you get to be happy? I don't know, I admitted. I don't know if I remember how. Then let me remind you, he said, and kissed me again, soft and sweet and full of promise. Part 4, The Growing Fire. The next few weeks were torture and ecstasy combined. Marcus and I tried to maintain boundaries, to take things slowly, to be responsible adults about an irresponsible situation. But the chemistry between us was a living thing that refused to be contained. He'd show up at my door with coffee and pastries, claiming he was in the neighborhood. Despite living 45 minutes away, we'd end up talking for hours, discovering we had the same taste in music, the same political views, the same inexplicable fondness for terrible puns. What do you call a fake noodle? He asked one morning, spreading cream cheese on a bagel. I'm going to regret asking this. What? An impasta. I groaned so loudly the neighbors probably heard. That's the worst thing anyone has ever said to me. You laughed. I did not. The corners of your mouth twitched. That counts. You're delusional. And you're beautiful when you're pretending not to smile. He leaned across the kitchen island, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woody and warm that made me want to bury my face in his neck. I love watching you fight the urge to be happy. I'm not fighting anything. You're fighting everything, Eleanor. You've been fighting your whole life. His hand covered mine on the counter. What would happen if you just stopped? The question haunted me for days. One evening, he came over to help me move furniture in the living room. David had taken his favorite pieces when he left: the leather armchair, the antique side tables, the artwork we'd collected together over 17 years. And I was rearranging what remained, trying to make the space feel less like a crime scene and more like a home. This couch needs to go against that wall, I said, pointing. Yes, ma'am. Marcus mock saluted, his biceps flexing beneath his gray t-shirt as he lifted his end of the couch. Anything else you need moved? Refrigerator? Small mountain? The emotional baggage you've been carrying since college. Haha. You're hilarious. I am actually. It's one of my many charms. Your ego is certainly charming. In the same way a hot air balloon is charming, large, inflated, and full of gas. He barked out a laugh, nearly dropping his end of the couch. Did you just call me a gas bag? If the balloon fits. We bickered as we worked, the playful tension building with each accidental touch, his hand brushing mine as we adjusted a lamp, my hip grazing his as we maneuvered around each other in the narrow space between the couch and the wall. By the time we finished, we were both breathless, and not entirely from exertion. Water? I asked, desperate for an excuse to escape to the kitchen and collect myself. I'd rather have something stronger. He caught my wrist as I passed him, his grip gentle but firm. Eleanor. Stop running. I'm not running. I'm getting beverages. Hydration is important. You're running. He tugged me closer until we were inches apart, until I could see the gold flecks in his green eyes and the small scar on his chin and the way his pulse jumped in his throat. Every time we get close to something real, you find an excuse. Water. Phone calls. Sudden exhaustion. A pressing need to reorganize your spice cabinet. That was one time, and the spices really did need reorganizing. Eleanor. The way he said my name, low and serious and hungry, made my protests die in my throat. I'm not him, Marcus said, his voice fierce. I'm not David. I'm not going to wake up one day and decide you're not enough. I'm not going to trade you in for a newer model when you're inconvenient. You have always been more than enough. You are, in fact, too much for most people. Too smart, too beautiful, too passionate. But not for me. Never for me. You can't know that. We barely. I know that you cry at commercials about dogs finding homes. I know you put exactly 1.5 sugars in your coffee because your father did the same way and it makes you feel close to him. I know you read romance novels but hide them inside literary fiction covers because someone once made you feel ashamed of what you love. I know you wanted to be an artist before David convinced you it wasn't practical. I know you still sketch in secret, in a leather journal you keep in your nightstand. Each revelation hit me like a small earthquake. He'd been paying attention. For 2 years while dating my daughter, while making polite conversation at family dinners, while being charming and funny and seemingly focused on Sarah. He'd been cataloging the details of who I was. The real me. The me I'd hidden behind layers of corporate wife perfection. That's either incredibly romantic or deeply concerning, I whispered. Which would you prefer? Both, I admitted. I think I prefer both. He kissed me then, slower than the first time, more deliberate. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head back, and I melted into him like I'd been waiting for this moment my entire life. Maybe I had been. Maybe everything, Richard's betrayal, Barbara's cruelty, David's abandonment, had been leading me here, to this man, to this moment, to this choice I kept dancing around. His mouth traveled from my lips to my jaw, down the column of my neck, and I gasped, my fingers digging into his shoulders. Stay, I breathed before I could stop myself. He pulled back, searched my face. Are you sure? No. Stay anyway. If you're feeling the heat between these two, smash that like button. And comment below. Do you believe in love that waits years to bloom? Have you ever felt this kind of connection? Part 5, The Daughter's Blessing. But we didn't take things further that night. Marcus, showing more restraint than I thought possible, kissed my forehead and said we should wait until we told Sarah. I want to do this right, he said. No more secrets. No more guilt. He was right, of course. The guilt was already eating at me, mixing with desire to create an emotional cocktail that left me sleepless and confused. Sarah arrived 3 days later, letting herself in with her key, finding Marcus and me cooking dinner together in the kitchen. We weren't touching, we'd heard the key, but something in the domesticity of the scene must have given us away. The ease with which we moved around each other, the shared glances, the invisible thread that seemed to connect us across the room. My daughter, beautiful, fierce, with her father's dark hair and my stubborn chin, looked between us with an expression I couldn't read. Aunt Barbara called me, she said, leaning against the doorframe with her arms crossed. She was practically hysterical. Something about you two having an affair. Sarah, sweetheart. Mom. She held up her hand. Before you say anything, I need to tell you something. She walked to the kitchen island, pulled out a stool, sat down with the deliberate care of someone about to deliver difficult news. I broke up with Marcus because I knew he was falling in love with you. The words didn't make sense. I replayed them in my head, certain I'd heard wrong. My brain kept trying to rearrange them into a different order that made more sense. What? Marcus and I said simultaneously. Sarah laughed. Actually laughed, the sound bright and genuine in the tense kitchen. Oh, come on. You two are ridiculous. I watched him watch you, Mom. Every family dinner, every holiday, every casual Sunday visit. He lit up when you walked into a room. He remembered every story you told, every preference you mentioned, every throwaway comment you made 3 months earlier. Meanwhile, he kept forgetting my birthday. I didn't forget, Marcus started. You programmed a reminder in your phone for Mom's birthday, Sarah interrupted. In February, when we'd been dating for 2 months. You never needed a reminder for hers. She shook her head. I could have forgiven that, maybe. Could have forgiven the emotional affair that neither of you realized you were having. But I couldn't compete with genuine love. And I didn't want to. Sarah, I never. Marcus tried again. I know you never acted on it. That's the only reason I'm here instead of screaming. She leaned forward, her eyes moving between us. Marcus is a good man. The best man I've ever dated, actually. And I realized somewhere around month 4 of our relationship that he would make an incredible stepfather but a mediocre husband for me. Because he wasn't in love with me. He was just waiting. I was crying now. I hadn't even noticed the tears starting. You're not angry? I'm furious, Sarah admitted. And for a moment my heart stopped. But not at you and not really at Marcus. I'm angry at Dad for checking out of your marriage years before he left. I'm angry at Aunt Barbara for spending your whole life making you feel small and worthless. I'm angry that you've spent 45 years apologizing for existing, for wanting things, for being human. She stood, crossed to where I stood frozen by the stove, and took my hands. Mom, I gave you my blessing months ago. You were just too scared to see it. I don't understand. Why do you think I kept inviting Marcus to family events after we broke up? Why do you think I made sure you two ended up alone together at every possible opportunity? Why do you think I told him about Richard, about the letters, about everything that made you who you are? Sarah squeezed my hands. I was setting you up, Mom. I was trying to give you permission to be happy. You just refused to take the bait. I pulled my daughter into a fierce hug, crying onto her shoulder while she rubbed my back like I used to do for her when she was small. I don't deserve you, I whispered. Probably not, she agreed with a watery laugh. But you've got me anyway. Now please, for the love of everything, just be happy. I'm tired of watching you settle for less than you deserve. Part 6. The Rainstorm. With Sarah's blessing secured, something shifted between Marcus and me. The guilt that had been weighing on my chest lifted, and in its place was something lighter, hope maybe, or possibility, or the simple joy of wanting something and being allowed to have it. It happened on a Thursday evening, during the kind of violent spring thunderstorm that knocked out power across the neighborhood. The sky had been dark all day, and by 6 o'clock, the rain was coming down in sheets, the wind howling against the windows like something alive and angry. Marcus had come over to check on me, the protective gesture making my heart ache in the best way, and found me in the living room with candles lit, wine poured, and absolutely no electricity. You look like you're staging a seduction scene, he teased, shaking rain from his dark hair, droplets flying everywhere like diamonds in the candlelight. The universe is staging a seduction scene. I'm just trying not to sit in the dark alone. Well, we can't have that. He shrugged off his wet jacket, and his white t-shirt clung to his chest in ways that made my mouth go dry and my thoughts go decidedly unpure. I'll keep you company. Purely chivalrous intentions. Of course, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. Completely innocent. Two adults, wine, candlelight, no electricity. Nothing suggestive about that at all. Exactly. He dropped onto the couch beside me, close enough that our thighs touched through the blanket I'd wrapped around myself. Pass the wine. Chivalry makes me thirsty. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching lightning illuminate the windows in brilliant flashes, the thunder rolling across the sky like drums. The wine was warming my blood, loosening the tension I'd been carrying for weeks. Months. Years maybe. Can I ask you something? Marcus said eventually, his voice soft in the candlelit darkness. Depends on what it is. When did you first know? About us, I mean. About this. Whatever this is. I took a long sip of wine, stalling. You want honesty? I want whatever you're willing to give me. First Thanksgiving, I admitted. You were arguing with David about architecture. He'd made some comment about modern buildings being ugly and soulless, and you went on this passionate defense of contemporary design that lasted almost an hour. You were so alive, so engaged, so absolutely certain of what you believed. I smiled at the memory. David never believed in anything that much. David never believed in me that much. I remember that argument, Marcus said. I remember thinking your husband was an idiot who didn't deserve you. You'd known me for 3 hours. I'd known everything I needed to know. He turned to face me, his knee pressing against mine under the blanket. You want to know when I knew? When? Same Thanksgiving. But earlier. Before the argument, before dinner. His eyes were dark in the candlelight, reflecting the flames like tiny fires. I came into the kitchen to ask if you needed help, and you were standing at the counter trying not to cry because you'd burned the gravy. And you looked up at me with these panicked eyes and said, "Please don't tell anyone, David will be furious. He has very specific expectations about gravy." I remembered. I'd been mortified. And I thought, Marcus continued, who makes this incredible woman afraid to burn gravy? Who makes her hide in kitchens and apologize for being human? And then I helped you remake it, and we talked for half an hour about nothing important, and when I walked out of that kitchen, he paused, swallowed. I knew I was in trouble. I just didn't know how much. You never said anything. You were married. To my girlfriend's father. He laughed without humor. What was I supposed to say? Excuse me, Eleanor. I know you've been married for 16 years and I'm currently dating your daughter, but I think I might be falling in love with you. It would have been awkward, I admitted. It would have been insane. So I tried to ignore it. Tried to focus on Sarah, tried to convince myself that what I felt was just attraction, admiration, something that would fade. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. It didn't fade. No, I whispered. It didn't. The conversation wandered after that, from childhood memories to future dreams, from fears to hopes to the mundane details of daily life. He told me about his mother, who'd abandoned him at 12, leaving a note that said she wasn't cut out for this. He told me about his father, who'd worked himself into an early grave trying to be both parents. He told me about the string of relationships where he'd always been the one trying too hard, loving too much, being too intense and too romantic and too much. I thought something was wrong with me, he admitted, his head resting on the back of the couch, his face turned toward mine. That I was broken somehow. That normal people didn't feel things this deeply. There's no such thing as too much, I said, running my fingers through his dark hair without quite deciding to. There's only people who can't handle depth. People who are afraid of intensity, because it requires them to be equally vulnerable. He leaned into my touch like a cat seeking warmth. And you? Can you handle it? I don't want to just handle it. The admission felt dangerous and true, stripped bare by wine and candlelight and the strange intimacy of the storm. I want to match it. I want to feel that much. I spent 17 years in a marriage that felt like slow suffocation, being careful and contained and appropriate. I don't want careful anymore. Marcus sat up, cupped my face again in that way he had, like I was something precious. What do you want? This. You. Someone who actually sees me. Someone who remembers that I take my coffee with exactly 1.5 sugars, that I cry at commercials about puppies, that I'm afraid of heights but love roller coasters anyway because the fear makes me feel alive. I see you, Eleanor, he said, his voice rough. I've always seen you. Then show me, I whispered. The kiss that followed was different from all the others. It was a claiming, a promise, a declaration of intent. His hand slid into my hair, down my back, pulling me onto his lap with an urgency that matched my own. The blanket fell away, forgotten. The wine glasses tipped on the coffee table, spilling burgundy across the wood, and neither of us cared. Tell me to stop, he gasped against my mouth, his fingers finding the hem of my sweater. If you want me to stop, tell me now, because in about 30 seconds I'm not going to be capable of rational thought. Don't stop, I said, and pulled my sweater over my head. What followed was everything I'd forgotten I was capable of feeling. Marcus was attentive where David had been perfunctory, passionate where David had been mechanical, present where David had been distant. He whispered my name like a prayer, touched me like I was precious, looked at me like I was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. We made love on the living room floor, on the couch, against the wall by the window while lightning illuminated our tangled bodies. We made love like we were making up for lost time. Like we were starving and had finally found sustenance. You have no idea, he said afterwards, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder as we lay tangled together, the storm still raging outside. How long I've imagined this. How many nights I lay awake thinking about touching you like this. Probably as long as I've been pretending not to imagine it. He laughed, kissed my forehead. We're a pair of idiots. Complete disasters, I agreed happily. Want to do it again? Absolutely. Give me 10 minutes. Take 5. He didn't need 5. Part 7: The Blossoming. The weeks that followed were a revelation. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be desired, to be pursued, to be the center of someone's attention. Marcus made me remember. He'd show up at my door with flowers for no reason. He'd text me throughout the day. Random observations, terrible jokes, links to articles he thought I'd find interesting. He'd call me late at night just to hear my voice before he fell asleep. You're spoiling me, I told him one evening as he presented me with a first edition of my favorite book, somehow procured from a rare bookstore 3 states away. That's the plan. He kissed my temple. 45 years of not being spoiled is enough. You're overdue. We went on dates, real dates, not just staying in to avoid being seen. Dinners at restaurants where he'd reserve the table with the best view. Movies where he'd hold my hand in the dark like a teenager. Walks along the waterfront where he'd stop in the middle of the path to kiss me, not caring who saw. People are staring, I murmured against his lips during one of these public displays. Let them stare. They're just jealous. Of what? Of me. He pulled back, grinned down at me. I'm kissing the most beautiful woman in this city. Of course they're jealous. You're ridiculous. You love it. I did. God help me, I did. We explored each other with the curiosity of new lovers, and the depth of people who'd spent years observing from a distance. I learned that he couldn't sleep without white noise, that he was terrified of spiders but would never admit it, that he sang off-key in the shower and knew all the words to every Disney song ever written. I had a deprived childhood, he explained when I caught him belting out Part of Your World one morning. Disney movies were my escape. From what? From the fact that my mother left and my father worked 80 hours a week, and I spent most of my childhood alone with a microwave and a prayer. He said it lightly, but I heard the old pain underneath. Disney movies taught me that love was real and good things happened to people who were brave enough to want them. Do you still believe that? I'm standing in your kitchen after spending the night in your bed. I'm in love with a woman who's smarter and kinder, and more beautiful than anyone I've ever known. She loves me back. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, rested his chin on my shoulder. Yeah, I still believe it. He learned my secrets too. That I still sketched in the leather journal, drawing faces I saw on the subway, landscapes from memory, and lately him. That I was terrified of becoming my mother, who'd spent her whole life making everyone else's dreams come true at the expense of her own. That I sometimes woke up in a panic, certain that this was all a dream and I'd wake up back in my old life, trapped in a loveless marriage with no hope of escape. I'm not going anywhere, he'd whisper on those nights, pulling me close, his heartbeat steady against my back. This is real. I'm real. We're real. We talked about the future with a tentativeness that gradually gave way to confidence. Maybe we'd travel, he'd always wanted to see Japan, and I'd dreamed of Italy since I was a girl. Maybe we'd move to a house outside the city, somewhere with a garden where I could paint, and he could design, and we could grow old together without the noise and pressure of urban life. Is it crazy that I'm already thinking about forever? He asked one night, tracing the lines of my palm like he was reading my fortune. Yes, I said. But I'm thinking about it too. Then we're both crazy. At least we're crazy together. Part 8: The Crisis. Barbara's counterattack came 3 weeks later, more devastating than I could have imagined. I came home from grocery shopping on a gray Tuesday afternoon to find police cars in my driveway, officers on my porch, and Marcus in handcuffs. Everything inside me turned to ice. The world narrowed to that single image. The man I loved, hands behind his back, face carefully blank. What's happening? I dropped the grocery bags, oranges and apples rolling across the lawn, a carton of eggs cracking on the concrete. Marcus. Mrs. Chun. An officer approached me, his face professionally neutral. Are you Eleanor Chun? Yes. What's going on? Why is he in handcuffs? We received a tip about stolen architectural plans. Very valuable intellectual property worth several $1 million. A search of Mr. Chen's apartment turned up evidence linking him to corporate espionage. That's insane. Marcus would never. He's a partner at his firm. Why would he steal from himself? Eleanor. Marcus's voice was calm, but I could see the fear beneath it, the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. It's okay. Don't panic. Call my lawyer. The number's in my phone, under Henderson. This is going to get sorted out. It's a misunderstanding. But his eyes told a different story. His eyes told me he knew exactly what this was. They put him in the back of a police car. They drove away. And I stood in my driveway surrounded by ruined groceries, watching my second chance at happiness disappear into the distance, and I knew with a certainty that turned my blood cold, that my sister had finally found a way to destroy me. The next 72 hours were a nightmare. Marcus was held without bail. The stolen plans were allegedly worth millions, and he was deemed a flight risk. His firm suspended him immediately, pending investigation. The news picked up the story, and suddenly my lover's face was plastered across local media. Labeled a thief and a fraud and a corporate spy. Architect accused of stealing $1 million designs, the headlines screamed. Rising stars fall from grace. I watched his mugshot flash across the television screen and had to run to the bathroom to throw up. It was Barbara, Sarah said grimly when she arrived at my house that night, laptop in hand. It has to be. We can't prove that. Then we find proof. My daughter's jaw was set, her eyes fierce. Mom, I know Marcus. He spent 2 years being the most honorable man I've ever dated. He wouldn't steal a paperclip, let alone proprietary designs. Someone set him up, and we both know who benefits from destroying him. Even if Barbara's behind this, how do we prove it? She's not stupid. She wouldn't leave a trail. Everyone leaves a trail. Sarah opened her laptop. Start from the beginning. When did Aunt Barbara start dating again? Who has she been seeing? What connections does she have to Marcus's firm? We worked through the night, running on coffee and righteous anger. I made calls to old contacts from David's corporate world, people who owed me favors from 17 years of being the perfect hostess. Sarah dove into social media, public records, anything that might connect Barbara to Marcus's firm. 3 a.m. we found it. Barbara had been dating someone for 4 months. A senior partner at Marcus's architecture firm named William Thorne. A man who had been passed over for the same junior partner position Marcus received. The stolen plans had been from William's project. The evidence planted in Marcus's apartment was accessible only to someone with inside knowledge of where he lived, where he kept his work files, what his schedule looked like. She convinced her boyfriend to frame Marcus, Sarah said slowly, staring at the screen. She destroyed an innocent man's career and freedom to punish you for being happy. I stared at the evidence of my sister's malice, at the lengths she'd gone to tear apart my life, and something inside me shifted, cracked, broke open. The Eleanor who apologized, who accommodated, who swallowed her pain to keep the peace, who let her sister steal her first love and forgave her, who let her husband neglect her for years and made excuses for him, that Eleanor died in that moment. In her place was someone harder, someone who'd finally had enough. Call Marcus's lawyer, I said, and find me Barbara's address. I'm ending this tonight. This is the moment everything nearly falls apart. If you're on the edge of your seat, share this story with someone who needs a reminder that love is worth fighting for. And tell me in the comments, would you fight this hard for someone you loved? Part 9: The Confrontation. I found Barbara at her downtown penthouse, the one she'd gotten in her divorce from Richard, who died of a heart attack 5 years ago, worn down by decades of trying to escape a marriage he'd never wanted. She was hosting a small gathering, wine and cheese and the kind of shallow laughter that passed for friendship in her circle. When I walked in unannounced, the room fell silent. Ellie. Barbara manufactured surprise beautifully. I had to give her that. What brings you here? I thought you'd be at home, comforting yourself after that unfortunate business with Marcus. Ask them to leave, I said quietly. Excuse me. Ask your friends to leave, Barbara. Or I'll say what I came to say in front of all of them. Your choice. Something in my voice, or maybe something in my face, made her pale slightly. She smiled at her guests, made excuses about family emergencies, ushered them out with promises to reschedule. When we were alone, she poured herself more wine with a hand that trembled slightly. I don't know what you think you know, she started. Stop. I held up my hand. I know about William. I know about the setup. I know you've been planning this for months, probably since the moment you walked in on Marcus and me in my kitchen. I know you convinced your boyfriend to frame the man I love, because you couldn't stand to see me happy. Even if that were true, which it isn't, you can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I pulled out my phone, showed her the messages Sarah had recovered from William's cloud backup. Messages he apparently thought were secure but weren't. Your boyfriend wasn't as careful as you thought. There are texts, emails, a paper trail a mile long. And here's the thing, Barbara, William is already talking. He was arrested an hour ago, and he's very eager to make a deal. The prosecutors offered him immunity in exchange for full cooperation. The color drained from my sister's face. Her wine glass trembled. I'm giving you one chance, I continued, my voice harder than I'd ever heard it. One chance to make this right. You're going to call the police and confess your involvement. You're going to clear Marcus's name completely. You're going to pay for his legal fees, his lost wages, and the damage to his reputation. And then you're going to get out of my life. Forever. And if I don't? Then I release everything else I found. I stepped closer to her, close enough to see the fear in her ice-blue eyes. Richard's journals. All of them. The DNA test proving Michael isn't his son, that he's actually Thomas the carpenter's boy. The letters where Richard begged you to let him go. The confession he wrote before his heart attack, explaining exactly how you trapped him, how you lied about me, how you destroyed 4 lives to get what you wanted. Barbara's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Red wine spread like blood across the white stone. Michael isn't Richard's son? I heard myself ask, the revelation still shocking even though I'd read it hours ago in Richard's careful handwriting. No. The word was barely a whisper. Thomas and I had been seeing each other behind your back. When I got pregnant, I knew I couldn't let you have the life I wanted. Richard was going places, everyone knew it. He was brilliant and ambitious and he was yours. Thomas was a carpenter with no ambition and no money. Oh, I made sure Richard couldn't escape. You told him he'd raped you. You told him if he didn't marry you, you'd tell me he'd attacked you. I was 24 years old and terrified. Barbara's voice broke, and for the first time in my life, I saw my sister without her armor. Mom always said you were the smart one, the capable one, the one who'd succeed at anything you tried. I was just the pretty one, and pretty fades. I needed security. I needed to matter to someone important. You needed to stop me from having anything you didn't have first. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw the pathetic, frightened woman underneath the designer clothes and the perfect makeup. You've spent 52 years trying to beat me at a competition I never knew I was in. And the irony is I would have given you anything. If you'd asked. If you'd been honest. If you'd trusted me even once. I know. Tears were streaming down Barbara's face now, ruining her makeup, revealing the lines she usually hid with careful artistry. I've always known. That's why I couldn't. Because you'd have given and I'd have taken, and you'd have loved me anyway, and I couldn't stand how that made me feel. Inferior. Inadequate. Less than. For a long moment I stood there, looking at the ruins of our sisterhood, the destruction of our family, the years of pain and loss and missed opportunities. Make the call, Barbara, I said finally. Make it now. Clear Marcus's name. And then, get help. Real help. Not for me. For yourself. Because this, I gestured at the broken glass, the spilled wine, her tear-stained face. This isn't winning. This is hell. And you've been living in it your whole life. She made the call. Part 10. Almost lost everything. Marcus was released 4 days later, all charges dropped. The headlines that had condemned him now celebrated his exoneration. Architect cleared. Former partner admits 2 frame up. William Thorne was facing felony charges. Barbara was in a psychiatric facility, undergoing intensive therapy as part of a plea deal that kept her out of prison. I was waiting outside the jail when Marcus walked out, wearing the same clothes he'd been arrested in, looking exhausted and rumpled and like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Hi," he said, his voice rough from days of minimal sleep. "Hi." I walked into his arms, pressed my face against his chest, breathed him in. He smelled like institutional soap and stress and home. "I'm so sorry. I should have. You saved me." He held me tighter, his arms shaking slightly. "Sarah told me everything. How you stayed up for 3 nights straight. How you called in every favor you'd ever accumulated. How you faced down Barbara alone. You went to war for me, Eleanor. You would have done the same. In a heartbeat. Without question." He pulled back, cupped my face, kissed me softly. "But I'm still impressed. My proper, polite Eleanor, taking down her evil sister like some kind of avenging angel. I didn't know you had it in you." "Neither did I admitted. "But apparently I'm not as proper and polite as I thought. Apparently I become quite dangerous when someone threatens the people I love." "Good." He kissed me again, longer this time. "Dangerous looks good on you." We went back to his apartment. Our apartment now, since I'd moved in while he was in jail, unable to stand being alone in my house with its memories, and he stood in the doorway, staring at the changes. "You moved in," he said quietly. "I didn't want you to come home to an empty apartment." I suddenly felt uncertain. "Is that okay? If it's too fast, I can." "It's perfect." He pulled me into his arms again. "It's everything I ever wanted." The shower he joked about, the one that would last 6 hours, actually happened. We stood under the hot water together, washing away the nightmare of the past week, rediscovering each other's bodies with gentle, reverent hands. He traced every inch of me like he was making sure I was real. I did the same to him, cataloging each familiar landmark. The scar on his chin, the freckle on his left shoulder, the way his breath caught when I touched the small of his back. We made love in the shower, then in the bedroom, then on the couch in the living room. It was different from before, more desperate, more grateful, more aware of how close we'd come to losing this. "I was so scared," I admitted afterwards, lying in his arms on the bed we now shared, his heartbeat steady under my ear. "When I saw the police cars, when they took you away, I thought I'd finally found something real, and it was being ripped away from me all over again." "I was scared too," he said. "Sitting in that cell, I kept thinking she'll give up. She'll decide I'm not worth the trouble. She'll go back to being sensible and safe, and I'll never see her again." "I almost did," I confessed. "There was a moment, maybe 2 a.m. the second night, when I thought, what am I doing? I'm 45 years old, fighting a battle I can't possibly win, for a relationship that's probably doomed anyway. I should cut my losses. Save myself. What changed your mind?" "I imagined a life without you in it." I raised my head, looked at him. "I imagined going back to being careful and contained and appropriate. I imagined years of safety and sensibility and absolutely no joy. And I thought, if this is my one chance at real happiness, I'd rather die fighting for it than live without it." "That's very dramatic," he said, but his eyes were wet. "I learned from the best. You're extremely dramatic." "It's part of my charm." "It is," I agreed. "It absolutely is." He shifted, propped himself up on one elbow, looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Marry me," he said. I blinked. "What?" "Marry me. Tonight. Tomorrow. Next week. I don't care when. I just know that life is too short and too unpredictable to waste time being sensible." He took my hand. "I almost lost everything, Eleanor. My career, my freedom, my future. The only thing that kept me sane in that cell was knowing you were out there fighting for me. Knowing you loved me enough to burn down your whole world to save mine. Marcus. I don't have a ring. I don't have a plan. I just have this." He pressed my hand to his chest, over his heart. "And this absolutely certainty that you're the only person I want to spend my life with. Please. Say yes." "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, absolutely yes." Part 11. The wedding. The wedding was small, 60 people in my mother's garden on a perfect September afternoon. Sarah stood beside me as maid of honor, beautiful in dusty rose, her new boyfriend Matthew watching from the second row. Marcus's best friend from college, James, served as best man and made a speech that had everyone crying and laughing. Barbara wasn't there. She was still in treatment, working through decades of dysfunction with therapists who specialized in complicated cases. She'd sent a letter, the first genuine communication we'd had in 23 years, apologizing not just for what she'd done to Marcus but for everything. For Richard. For the years of sabotage. For the constant grinding competition that had poisoned our entire family. I hadn't responded yet. I didn't know what to say. But the letter was on my nightstand, and I read it sometimes late at night trying to find forgiveness in my heart. My mother, 91 and razor-sharp, watched me walk down the makeshift aisle with tears streaming down her papery cheeks. She'd always loved me in her complicated, imperfect way. She just loved Barbara's needs more, because Barbara's needs were louder. "You look beautiful," she'd said that morning, helping me zip my dress. "Your father would be so proud." Would he? I wasn't sure anymore. He always said you were the strong one. The survivor. She touched my cheek with trembling fingers. He was right. Marcus was waiting at the end of the aisle, in a dark blue suit that made his green eyes glow, watching me approach with an expression that made me forget to breathe. Behind him, the trees were just starting to turn, gold and red and orange against a brilliantly blue sky. "Hi," he said when I reached him. "Hi," I replied. "You look incredible. You look terrified." "I'm terrified you'll come to your senses and run." "Never." I took his hands. "You're stuck with me now." We'd written our own vows, and when Marcus spoke, I forgot there was anyone else in the garden. "Eleanor," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I fell in love with you across a dinner table while I was dating your daughter. It was inconvenient and impossible and probably unethical, and I didn't care. You were everything I'd ever wanted and everything I thought I couldn't have. You were brilliant and kind and beautiful and so incredibly sad. And I wanted nothing more than to spend the rest of my life making you happy." He paused, swallowed hard. "When life finally gave me the chance to love you, I swore I would spend every day making sure you knew how precious you are. How wanted. How worthy of all the joy the universe has to offer. I can't promise our lives will be easy, they probably won't be. But I can promise that whatever comes, we'll face it together. I choose you, Eleanor. Today and every day. In sickness and health, in trouble and triumph, in absolutely insane family situations and quiet Sunday mornings. I choose you." I was crying too hard to speak clearly, but I managed. "Marcus," I said, "I spent 45 years being afraid. Afraid of wanting too much, feeling too much, living too much. I made myself small because it was easier than being seen. I settled for less because I didn't believe I deserved more. And then you looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw myself through your eyes. And I thought, maybe I am worthy. Maybe I do deserve joy." I squeezed his hands. "You taught me that love isn't about being safe. It's about being brave enough to risk everything. You taught me that the right person doesn't make you smaller. They make you more yourself than you've ever been. I choose you, Marcus. Today and every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I choose us. By the power vested in me," the officiant said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Marcus, you may kiss your bride." He did. Thoroughly. Inappropriately. The guests cheered and my mother laughed and Sarah Wolf whistled and James shouted something about getting a room. We didn't get a room. We danced. We ate cake. We accepted congratulations from everyone we loved. And later, in the honeymoon suite of a boutique hotel, we made love like newlyweds, which I suppose we were, and fell asleep tangled together, utterly content. "Any regrets?" Marcus murmured against my hair. "Not a single one." Part 12. The Unexpected. The pregnancy came as a surprise 6 months after the wedding. At 46, I'd assumed that chapter was closed, that whatever children I'd have were already grown and out of the house. I stared at the positive test for 10 minutes before I believed it. Marcus was at work when I called him, and his reaction was immediate. "Don't move. Stay exactly where you are." "I'm coming home." "Marcus, I'm fine, it's just." I said don't move. "I'm leaving now. 20 minutes. He made it in 15, bursting through the door like the house was on fire. "Where are you? Are you okay? Did you faint? Do you need water? Should I call a doctor?" "I'm 46 and pregnant," I said. "I didn't get shot." He stopped. Stared. "You're serious? It's positive? We're going to have a baby." I held up the test. "We're going to have a baby." The look on his face, wonder and terror and joy all mixed together, made everything worth it. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every year of waiting and wanting and not having. All of it led here, to this moment, to this man, to this unexpected miracle. "We're going to be grandparents and parents in the same year," Marcus said, staring at the test. Sarah had announced her pregnancy a month ago. Hope was due in the fall. "Is that insane?" "Completely." He grinned, that boyish smile that still made my heart flutter. "I love it." The pregnancy was challenging. Morning sickness at my age was no joke, and the doctors monitored me closely for complications. But Marcus was there for every moment, every appointment, every ultrasound, every midnight craving for pickles and ice cream. "This is disgusting," he said, watching me dip a dill pickle into mint chip ice cream. "Don't judge me. Your son wants what he wants. My son has bizarre taste. He gets it from his father. My taste is impeccable." You married a 45-year-old divorcee you met through her daughter. Like I said. Impeccable. James Michael Chun was born on a Tuesday in March, at 3:47 a.m. After 16 hours of labor that Marcus spent alternately holding my hand and trying not to pass out. He had his father's green eyes and my stubborn chin and a set of lungs that could wake the entire maternity ward. He's perfect, Marcus said, cradling our son with the terrified reverence of a first-time father. He's absolutely perfect. He's screaming. Perfectly. Sarah's daughter Hope was born 2 weeks later, and suddenly our small family had expanded in the most chaotic, wonderful way possible. There were diapers and bottles and sleepless nights and moments of pure, overwhelming joy. I can't believe this is my life, I said one evening, watching Marcus rock James to sleep while Sarah and her husband Matthew dozed on the couch with Hope. My mother was in the kitchen making tea, humming softly to herself. Believe it, Marcus said. You fought for this. You earned this. We fought for it. Together. Together, he agreed. Always together. Epilogue 5 years later. I'm 51 now. Marcus is 38. James is 5 and he's starting kindergarten next week. A fact that fills me with equal parts pride and terror. Hope is our constant visitor. She and James inseparable despite their 2-week age difference. Barbara and I have slowly, carefully rebuilt something like a relationship. It's not what it was. That version of sisterhood was too poisoned to salvage. But it's something new. Something healthier. She's been sober for 4 years, in therapy for 5. And when she came to James's birthday party last month, she watched Marcus and me with something that looked almost like acceptance. I never understood what you had, she admitted quietly, cornering me in the kitchen while everyone else sang happy birthday in the living room. Richard and I, it was never like this. It was power and fear and competition. I thought that was what love looked like. Watching you too. She shook her head. I'm envious, Ellie. But for the first time in my life, I'm not destructive about it. I'm just trying to understand. There's nothing to understand, I said. We chose each other. We keep choosing each other. Every day in small ways and big ones we decide that us is worth the effort. Worth the risk. Worth everything. Is it always easy? Never. I laughed. We argue about loading the dishwasher and whose turn it is to do the night feeding. We disagree about parenting and finances, and whether the thermostat should be set at 68 or 70. He thinks I'm too soft on James. I think he's too strict. He doesn't understand why I need 3 hours alone with my sketchbook every Saturday. I don't understand his obsession with vintage cars. But even when I'm furious at him, I'd rather be fighting with Marcus than getting along with anyone else. Even when he drives me crazy, I can't imagine my life without him in it. I smiled. That's what love is, Barbara. Not the absence of conflict. Just the presence of something worth fighting for. She nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. I'm glad you found it, Ellie. Even if I had to nearly destroy both your lives for you to get here. She winced. Too soon. Way too soon. Sorry. Therapy humor. I'm working on it. Keep working. Marcus found me in the kitchen after Barbara left, slipping his arms around my waist from behind and resting his chin on my shoulder. His favorite position. Everything okay? Everything's perfect. I leaned back into him, feeling his warmth, his solidity, his presence. She's trying. It's weird and uncomfortable and probably premature, but she's trying. Do you forgive her? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm working on it. Some days I think I'm there. Other days I remember what she did to you, to us, and I want to scream. But I'm working on it. That's all anyone can do. James burst into the kitchen then, covered in birthday cake, demanding that we come see him blow out the candles again, because Hope missed it. Hope was standing right there, Marcus pointed out. She blinked. It doesn't count if you blink. I looked at my son, the miracle I never expected, and at Marcus, the love I never believed I deserved, and at the life we'd built together against all odds and opposition. I said something to you once, I told Marcus as James dragged us toward the living room. Do you remember? The day everything changed. You said you wished you'd had a lover like me. I was wrong. I stopped in the hallway, pulled him close, ignored James's impatient tugging. I didn't wish for a lover like you. I wished for you. Specifically, exactly only you. Everything that came before, the pain, the loneliness, the years of settling, it all led here. To you. And I wouldn't change a single moment. He kissed me then, right there in the hallway, with our son complaining at our feet and the party waiting in the other room. I love you, Eleanor-chan. I love you too, Marcus-chan. I smiled against his lips. Now let's go watch our son blow out candles for the 15th time. 16th, James corrected. Hope sneezed during number 15. We went. We watched. We cheered when the candles finally went out and stayed out. And later that night, after the guests had gone and the children were in bed, Marcus and I sat on our porch swing, watching the stars come out. Happy? He asked, echoing my mother's question from years ago. Completely, terrifyingly, impossibly happy, I replied. Good. He pulled me closer. That's all I ever wanted for you. And for yourself? He smiled, that boyish, beautiful smile I'd fallen in love with across a Thanksgiving table, that I fell in love with again every single day. I already have everything I need, he said. Right here. I leaned my head on his shoulder and watched the stars and thought about all the roads that had led us here. The heartbreak and the healing, the years of quiet desperation and the moment I'd finally been brave enough to reach for what I wanted. The way one shocking confession in a kitchen had transformed into this. A life fuller and richer and more joyful than anything I'd ever dared to imagine. Thank you, I whispered. For what? For waiting for me. For not giving up. For seeing me when I'd forgotten how to see myself. He kissed my forehead. You never have to thank me for that. Loving you isn't a sacrifice, Eleanor. It's the best choice I ever made. The crickets sang. The stars wheeled overhead. And I knew with certainty that went bone deep, that the life I was living now, messy, complicated, gloriously imperfect, was the life I was always meant to have. I just needed to be brave enough to claim it. Thank you for taking this incredible journey with Eleanor and Marcus. If their story touched your heart, made you laugh and cry and believe in second chances, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about hope, redemption, and the courage to choose happiness. Share this with someone who needs to remember that their story isn't over, that the best chapters might still be waiting to be written. And comment below, what did this story teach you about love? What would you fight for? I read every single comment, and your thoughts mean the world to me. Until next time, remember, it's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to be brave. It's never too late to fall in love with your life. Be well, be brave, and be loved. The end.